Okay.
And we're just going to start at the very beginning of your soccer experience. How old were you? Was it something that your parents put you into? Did you have siblings that were playing or cousins that were playing? How did it
Yeah.
start for you?
Um, yeah, like yes to all of those. I started when I was like 4 or 5, maybe like super young, and I'm the youngest of four, and so I have two older sisters and an older brother, and they all played soccer. And so I was always like dragged, with them, watching them play. And then my parents were coaches, and my mom also like played in like adult leagues that my dad would coach. So I just feel like, yeah, I grew up around soccer. They put us in that. And then just watching my siblings play, my parents play, it was just something that I also just fell in love with.
And then have you always been a midfielder, or did you find that during the time in rec where they kind of move everyone around?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question because I haven't even, no one's ever asked me that. When I was younger, I don't know. I think we all probably just played everywhere. And then it was something that I probably, you know, sometimes when you get older, you start to see like what players fit where. And so, I mean, as long as I can remember from when I was like 9, I was always a center mid, but more attacking. Now I'm a defensive mid, but I was always like an attacking mid.
And what was your first experience with sports psychology?
Um,
Early on, did you wait until you got into college? Did your college
yeah.
have those kind of resources?
Are you talking about like utilizing sports psychology or just taking an interest in sports
Just
psychology?
an interest. I mean, what was your very first, your introduction to it?
Yeah. I think for me, I'm like, I can't really pinpoint a time. I just have played on like so many teams and played so many different sports and noticed that, um, like athletes struggle with confidence a lot or they go in slumps, and I've been through it myself. And so I think I took more of a like strong interest in it when I went pro, just because I saw like different levels of that more so than in college or high school. So yeah, I would say probably like my first and second year professionally is when I was like, all right, I think sports psychology is like a really important thing.
Can you work me through your recruiting story
Oh
to
gosh.
to D1 or to D2? I mean, because it's different depending on the division level. So
Yeah.
when was your first experience with your eventual college coaches, and how did that work out?
Yeah. So I was pretty late in the recruiting process. I feel like mine wasn't as like traditional as other people, but I yeah was going to tournaments for clubs with my club team, and then at that time, so it was probably like my sophomore junior year, I was getting letters from schools, and I was also emailing some. I don't think I really, yeah, I didn't really know the schools sometimes that were sending me mail. I didn't do like a great job at really figuring out who was interested, and then um, I did have I was really interested in going to the University of South Carolina, and so I went to a camp there because I was getting recruited by them. And when I was going to like an ID camp, another coach, that I ended up going to, Francis Marion, he was helping them run their camp. And so he ended up also offering me like a scholarship. And at the time, I was more so looking for like a financial, like a big scholarship. I had a full ride at Francis Marion just because my parents had 4 kids and they're trying to send us to college and it was going to be helpful. So I ended up committing to Francis Marion University. And there are some other schools there that I like went on recruiting visits and whatnot, but I just went with like the scholarship at that time.
And what's the difference between when coaches and team personnel can reach out in D1 versus D2?
Yeah, well, at the time, Francis Marion was independent D1. It was only women's soccer and men's golf, and so now they didn't end up making the full transition just because of the budget. So now they're in D2. So I don't know the full difference between. I think I know, and it's changed so much since I've been in college. So I think nowadays coaches can't reach out directly to people like players until maybe their junior year, and there's like a period where the window opens, but they can contact like your coach to tell you they're interested, or you can reach out to them and go on campus and make it like unofficial. Um, so yeah, it's changed so much right now, but I think there's different periods that you can reach out to players for maybe each division.
And what was the most difficult part about being a student athlete?
Oh man. I think probably just the time management piece, because yeah, you have maybe morning lift or morning practice and then classes and then maybe another, a lift or training depending on what you did in the morning, and then having to study. So I think just, and then also wanting to have fun, which is hard sometimes when you're in season. So I think just, yeah, the time management piece was really hard, and making sure that you're balanced with like a social life and doing well academically, and then also performing for your sport.
So what kind of resources for student athletes did Francis Marion have? I mean, how far off the field did those helpful measures go?
Yeah, not much at that time. I don't even know. It's crazy because I interned at I worked at a college counseling center when I was getting my master's, but I don't even think we had or maybe we had a counseling center at that time, but I don't even remember. And, if we did, we didn't really have much resources to really anything. Obviously, if you wanted to do, like if you needed a tutor or you're struggling academically, those types of things were available, but not really like anything mental health or sports psychology wise. I don't know. Have you guys had that? Have you had that experience?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2019, and that was always available to student athletes.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if you could compare and contrast the opportunities available when you were a student athlete versus the colleges that you worked with now that
Yeah.
you're a professional.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I obviously I went to a school that was not like really like fully funded. So maybe our resource, I don't know what other people's experiences have been. And it's been like so long ago that I've graduated, but being at like working on campus later on in life, I've seen that they have more resources now. They'll have like athletic counselors or the counseling center, or um yeah, just more stuff on campus for them. But when I was, yeah, in school, we didn't have much at all.
Is that discrepancy what kind of pushed you into what you're doing now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like that probably was because I had a few teammates that were struggling, and it was a lot because we didn't really know what to do, and we were trying to look up counselors for them like outside of school, and if they didn't want to tell their parents, that it's like they kind of needed to know because their insurance. And so it was just this missing piece, and I always wanted to be like a supportive resource for athletes, and even non-student athletes, just because it was really important for people. And so I would say that probably sparked the interest there, and then when I went pro, it was like, all right, this is really needed.
So we're going to talk about that period of your life now. At what point in your college career did you realize that you had professional implications?
um Not until my senior year. I It was one of those things where we were good our first 2 years, and then our last 2 years we were um, not great. And when my season ended, and we hadn't shifted into a conference yet, so um, I didn't have the opportunity to like go to like a conference like tournament and try and make it to NCAA's. And so my senior year, when it ended, I was just like, you know what? I like don't want soccer to be done. And I was looking up stuff online because the women's league had not been around for so long. And there was a league at that time, it was the WPS, and it was going to be in its second year, that I wanted to try out in. And so I just looked up some open tryouts and talked to my head coach, and he was like, yeah, I'll help you train. And it was actually really, like, looking back, it was really sweet because no one looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe they were thinking it underneath, but they all helped. The men's soccer coach, he helped me as well, which I'm super grateful for. And yeah, it ended up really working out.
How incredible has the development of the NWSL been for just since you've been in the pros?
Yeah.
I mean, now they have a full draft. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance. It sounds like your invite was very informal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the league, well, they still do have the opportunities to have open tryouts for players at some teams, just for the players who don't get drafted. And so, yeah, the league over time, I mean, I can't even, it might be 10, it's going on a 10th season maybe. And they've had a lot of changes. More teams have been added. Yeah, more players are being drafted. More players are like having lengthier careers. They're not retiring as early now. And um, there's obviously some forced changes that needed to happen after this past year. And then with the CBA going on right now, it's just pushing it for even more. So it's really exciting. I think this past year is an important year for like even further growth and quicker growth, because it has been a little bit slower. But as a player who's been in it since the beginning, it's really like validating and promising, to see that the league's going to sustain and more players have the opportunity to play.
How difficult was it to play professional soccer and then go back and get your master's?
Oh gosh. You just like hit like such a rough period for me, because it was gonna it was gonna make sense when I was with the Breakers. Like I was playing with Boston, and the deal was I was gonna be able to play, and then at night I would go drive to Springfield and get my master's and take night classes. And I was the GA for the women's soccer team, and they didn't train till like 4. So I was gonna be able to do both. It was gonna be a lot, but there was an understanding there that that's what was going to happen. And then it started off well, but then our team folded. So once they folded, I got picked up by Portland, and they knew I was getting my master's, and they allowed me to join the team late, and then leave early, because I didn't want to give up my master's degree or put it on hold because the GA position was paying for my school. So the back and forth was really hard, and I did it for the first year at Portland, and then the second year when I went back, I joined late again, and then I tore my ACL like a month later. So I obviously, like, my body wasn't ready because I was doing too much. But it was really challenging. It taught me a lot, but it also, I think, helped me be a better player because I was also coaching. I had a different perspective on life. And then when I went back last year, I had a really good season. And then this year, actually, like, built off of that. So it was hard, but I was supported by Portland, which was really incredible, because I don't think any other team would let you come late and leave early, for 2 years. And yeah, I think it all paid off in the end.
Let's talk about the ACL tear. Is that, I mean, that's not the first injury that you've sustained.
Yeah, it's the first serious injury. So I've been really lucky in my career that I have not had like an injury that's put me out for an extended period of time. It's always been like a week max, maybe. And the ACL tear was probably a blessing in disguise, honestly, which it needed to happen, in the sense like it helped me become like a better athlete, because I had to really start from square one and build my body back up in ways that I hadn't before. Like, and I really took a break or did much. And then mentally, it was super hard. I struggled, but I was also in grad school too. So I think it was like a really good distraction being in school. And yeah, it was humbling. I'm sure you've heard that before, with like a lot of people are always like, it's a humbling experience. Like, you see your body change. And so it did pay off, which was nice. So have you had any serious injuries?
Yeah, I broke my collarbone. I was a
Ow.
goalkeeper and I broke my collarbone and it ended my career.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm always interested to listen to the injury experiences of not only other soccer players, but I mean all of the other sports.
Yeah.
Like I've interviewed a couple of extreme sport, BMX, X Games,
Oh, wow.
and I mean their injuries are so extreme.
I can't even imagine. Yeah.
And there was one He is a Team USA speed skier, and he was competing over in Italy, and he didn't tear, he broke his tib fib
Oh my God.
on a hill in Italy.
Oh my God.
And they took him to an Italian doctor because that was the closest medical facility that they had. He was like, I don't speak Italian. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't even know the severity of my injury. I was just in Italy competing at like a Grand Prix. And then my parents were asleep in the US. I felt so alone. I had no idea what was going on. Then they put me in an ambulance and they took him to a different country. And he was like, I don't even know what's happening to me. It was just like that experience, listening to him recall that injury was insane.
Yeah, that is so scary. And it's one of those things where I feel like you're probably like so scared in the moment. And then when you look back on it, you're like, what in the world? But you always like can find the silver lining. But that
Yeah.
is frightening. Yeah,
Yeah.
injuries are, yeah, the worst.
How much of your master's curriculum had to do with injury rehabilitation? I mean,
Um,
were you like having that weird kind of meta experience where you would learn about it and then implement it on yourself?
yeah. Yeah, so this is so funny that you actually bring that up. So part of my program that I was in, we worked as like to get hours in the rehab facility at Springfield College. And prior to going out to Springfield, like the season that I tore my ACL, I was working in that, and I actually had like 3 athletes that had torn their ACLs. So, and I like saw their rehab, I saw like the mental, side of it. And to be fair, all 3 of them had like the best attitudes ever, and they just like excelled in their rehab. And it was really cool for me to watch how they progressed, and how once you get over that little hump, then you're feeling like a lot better. So when I tore mine, it was like, well, I already had really good perspective on it firsthand and seen it weekly. And I think that actually really helps me with my recovery, because I knew that you could either be really upset and sad about it, which wasn't going to help your recovery, or you're just going to have to accept it even though you don't like it. That like radical acceptance piece of like, all right, I don't like it, I'm going to accept it, I'm going to move forward with it. And then thankfully I had like people in the league that had just torn their ACL like reach out to me, which was like super helpful as well. So yeah, I would say that rehab experience definitely set me up like for success with my injury. And I didn't even realize it in the moment. So
Background information, what year did you tear your ACL and which knee is it?
I tore my ACL in 2019, and well, it was like 2018 going into 2019. So it was like June of 2018. No, it was June of 2019. Sorry. June of 2019. It was my left. Yeah.
Okay.
Planted, and the typical ACL. And
No-
it was
Non-contact.
our first home game in like weeks, because our stadium was getting like redone, and we had like 20,000 fans, and it was like 5 minutes before the first half ended. It was just like so horrible. It was horrible. I can't believe it. It's all right.
Oh my goodness. What kind of experience mentally did that put you into? I know you just talked about how seeing athletes you were working with going through ACL rehab kind of helped you, but what was the thought process during that recovery time for you?
Yeah, I think well, I feel like I had been around enough people who had torn their ACL too. And so I knew like when I did it, like I knew that I had torn it, even though they were like, well, see the MRI results. So I think just knowing right away, like I didn't really have much hope. It was like I heard the pop, like I tore my ACL, and I wasn't trying to make like best case scenario out of it. Um, so when they did tell me the news, it was like I just made a decision right then that I was gonna be positive about it as much as I could, knowing that I was gonna have hard days, and I was gonna dedicate all my time to the rehab that I could. And thankfully in Portland, our PT is like one of the best with ACL recoveries, and their facility is like attached to our stadium. So I was able to do like rehab, still be around the team. Like they kept me very busy. Um, so yeah, I just think like when I had a bad day, I kind of just like let it be a bad day, but it was never going to be like 2 days in a row kind of thing. And then yeah, just trying to be as positive as I could, and knowing that like I didn't know if I was gonna play or not. I thought I was maybe gonna retire. So it was like I'm gonna rehab as if I'm gonna be playing, and I want to be a pro athlete still, even if I'm not gonna play, and just kind of see how it goes. So I think just deciding right from the start, like I need to be positive about this. I need to put all of my energy, like this is gonna be a good thing in the end. And it kind of worked. Not kind of, it did work out.
And then I was looking at your playing experience. 10 clubs, 8 years.
There's more.
Two international stints.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's quite an experience.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, mentally, what was going through your head as you were kind of bouncing around?
Yeah. I know. It was, oh, I know. I get this question a lot, and I don't even know if my answer is helpful, because it's more of like, I guess if I had to sum it up, it was like just capitalizing on opportunities and just seeing where it went. But yeah, it has not been an easy journey. Like I was in the WPS and played there for 2 years, and then our league folded. Um, and then it was kind of like crunch time. Like I didn't have a backup plan. I need to figure out what I wanted to do. And I didn't really have time. Again, it always goes back to like, I can't really think about the negatives. It's like, how can I make the best of this situation? And it did work out. Like I found another team, and then the NWSL came back. Going overseas was something that I was like, I need to get out of my comfort zone, and I want to experience a different culture, a different style of play. Like this will be good for my growth. And that was an incredible experience. And then being in the league, I think just going through it with being traded and teams folding, and you just really need to have this like one, belief in yourself, and two, like commitment to like what you truly love and believe in. And then there's that resilience piece that I think most athletes do have, with overcoming injuries and all that little stuff. So yeah, I think it's one of those things where mentally I was like, all right, this is what happened, and I give myself a little time frame to be upset or excited or whatever it is, and then I need to fully embrace it and know that even though it's going to be hard and challenging in the time, it's probably going to make me a lot better player and person in the long run. And that's been true throughout, and it's been hard. Like there's definitely been some like pretty shitty times, but after getting through that, it's been like the best for me.
Well, Finland and Australia don't really sound like negative places to
No,
land.
they're not at all. Yeah, Australia was great, but I did get injured there my first year there, like in the first game. So I wasn't even able to really play much. So that was really horrible. And kind of the same experience with like the guy that you're just talking about. It's like I got injured, no one really knew what I needed, and I wasn't getting proper rehab. And then I was out for like 3 months with like not really much progress. And then the second year there was a lot better experience. And then Finland, yeah, I was on an English speaking island, so that I was like a glorified trip, because most of the time when you go to another country you would have to learn the language, and I wanted to, and all the players spoke you know um different languages, and I was trying to learn. But yeah, it was a really good experience. I got really lucky. They were not negative experiences.
And then what was it like after playing overseas to then come back to America to a newly kind of revitalized NWSL experience?
Yeah, I know. That was, I think, because I was in Australia at that time, and that's when I wait, I got traded. Oh yeah. So I was in, okay. So both times I was in Australia. So the first time I was in Australia, the league came back and I was injured, like I had said. And so I was just stressed about like where am I going to end up? Because there was like a draft and everyone's names got put into this draft that had played or entered, and I got picked up by Western New York. And when I went there after Australia, I was not fully healthy. So I was really, and they didn't really know about it. So I was stressed. I think all of my energy was on how am I going to make sure that I come in fit and healthy. And yeah, that was a really rocky period because there's another player there. It was like back and forth. And then I ultimately ended up winning the position, and we made the championship that year actually, which was amazing. So I think just, yeah, being injured and knowing I had competition and coming back from that, I couldn't really think about anything else. Just like, how am I going to make this work? And then the second time I was in Australia, that team traded me to Washington Spirit. And so I was like, and my roommate randomly in Australia who played with me at Western New York, also got traded to the Spirit. So it was like a weird period because we're like, that's not really where we wanted to go. And I mean, it ended up being the best decision ever. Like I loved it. We wanted to go West Coast, but dealing with that in another country, not really being able to tell my teammates in Australia, like they don't, like, oh, I just got traded to another team, and trying to focus on my season there, but also trying to figure out like, where am I going to live and all of that in DC and meeting new people. So yeah, it was a lot of transitions both times. Yeah, at those times you can just focus on yourself and what can I bring to the team, and what are my strengths and how am I going to fit in.
So you got traded from Australia back to the United States.
I was playing, so I was on loan in Australia. So the team that had loaned me there, they called me and told me that I was being traded to the Spirit. So when I went overseas in the off season, so I wasn't missing like the NWSL season. So I had to, when I flew back from Australia, I went home to pack my stuff, and then I was going to DC.
Wow. Is that, I mean, that seems like a lot of trading. Is that normal for the league?
Yeah, I think like during that time there was like a lot of trades. And then because then I had another experience with getting traded from the Spirit after, because a new coach came in. But no, I would say now, like it that's actually a really good point that you bring up. Like most of the players have stayed with their team. Like a lot of these players in the league have been with their teams for like 6-7 years. I also feel like a lot of that comes down to there hasn't been free agency, and that's what we're trying to work on with our CBA. So some players might feel a little stuck. But there has been, with the expansion teams, there's been like a lot of movement. So I think players now have more options, and that they feel more empowered to have a say in where they want to be and have maybe a connection there. So I think we'll see trades happening again like this year, maybe next year with more expansion. And then it'll be like that period where players probably stay with their teams for a little bit longer.
There are some really cool expansions going on
Yeah.
in the next few years. I mean, how is that going to give more women an experience to play professionally?
Yeah, I'm like super pumped about this because San Diego and LA joined this year. And so it's already like kind of shooken up the league a little bit. Players are moving. I think it's going to be a pretty like even league. Well, last year was even like a pretty even league. I think the league's just getting more competitive and more even. And now there's more talent able to join, like you mentioned, with more teams, because what's happening is a lot of players, if they're playing longer, then there's like less opportunity for rookies to break into the squads or even be rostered. So a lot of players are going overseas, which I think is really awesome. That's an opportunity for women as well, for like big teams. And then now there's just more teams, so more roster spots for players to come in. And with like the stability and hopefully the minimum salary coming up, it's just going to be a better experience for these players as well. So yeah, it's really exciting. I think there's going to be more expansion next year. I can't remember there's rumors that there's going to be another like 1 or 2 teams. So yeah, it's really awesome for women's soccer.
And then what is it like training alongside women who have been to World Cups and Olympics?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably been like one of the coolest experiences for me, like being a pro is I feel like I've played with like every because I've been playing for so long. It's like I've played with so many players on the national team, current and past. And then also from like other countries. Like I've played with like a ton of the Australian national team players and I played with players from Spain and like it's just in Brazil, like it's been and playing against them too. It's really cool because you can also really assess like your own talent and also just playing with those special players is a lot of fun. So for me, that's been like one of the coolest experiences just because I've been able to play with so many different levels of talent and everyone brings something different. Even the players like not on the national team have something special. So yeah, that's been the funnest part for me, like throughout my career. And obviously with Portland, with like so many big names on the team, has made it like a really special and cool experience.
How, I mean, you were just talking about how you've played with athletes from literally all over the world.
Mhm.
How interesting is it to see the world through the lens of professional soccer?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was like I love soccer. Like I just love soccer. I'm sure you feel that way too if you played. Like it's just like the coolest sport. Yeah, it's honestly been it gives so much perspective and I think everyone has a different approach to playing with internationals or like national team players or even going overseas. But for me it's been you just get to know people's stories and you appreciate them on like a deeper level and I think that's really important for players to get to know people's stories because it explains like why they might be the way they are or like what drives them and it gives you like a deeper appreciation and understanding for them and so for me it's just given me a lot of perspective on the sport of soccer and also like life just going after your goals and like working hard and the dedication and um that's like the locker room stuff and getting to know players is like the funnest part for me too so it's been really really awesome for my growth just to see that from different lenses.
So, what drives you?
What drives me? Oh gosh. I would say I feel like I've always been kind of like the underdog. Like my story's not normal, like making it through open tryouts, like not being a big name. I'm also a player who's like pretty small, not super athletic. Like I'm just like a soccer player, like really detailed with the things I do. And so I would say just competing, what drives me is just like proving myself and competing with the best and making sure that I'm getting better every day. And it doesn't matter if people see it or not. I know that when I leave a game or training, like I got better or I achieve my goals. So I guess what drives me is just like competing and being the best player and person that I can be. And that has helped me like every day, like be in the positions that I have been throughout my career.
How do you regulate your emotions when you sometimes don't live up to those self implemented expectations?
Yeah. I always go back to like, okay, well, if it didn't work out, like what can I change and how do I then apply it? So for me, it's like I know it's not always gonna be perfect and there's gonna be setbacks or I'm gonna have a bad game or not feel good, but I'm not gonna dwell on it. So just going in with like a fresh new mindset every day. And I think I really embodied that this year with like every day is a new day. I'm going to give it 100% of what I have and do that in training and then the games. And yeah, I had a really great year this year. I was like up for MVP. And I think it's just because it was day by day. How can I be my best? If I'm not feeling great, what can I give? So yeah, maybe an optimistic person. I don't know.
And then how do you implement your master's curriculum and coursework that you learned into how you train? Or do
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. No, I do. It's like, I think learning, especially like what's in your control and what's not in your control. And, are you going to focus on the coach or are you going to focus on yourself kind of thing? even with like, you know, the emotional regulation piece, like you're talking about, like if I make a bad pass in a game, like I'm going to take like a few deep breaths and I'm going to move on from there. I kind of have like a little reset button from that. And then just focusing, like breaking down like my identity, like what are my strengths and like how does that fit into the team. I'm like spitting stuff off, sorry if I'm not going into enough detail. And then the last thing is like, I think with a lot of athletes, we're like compare ourselves to other people. And so just bringing it back to yourself and what you can bring. So I think learning that in my program and like working with other athletes with those same things, like what's in your control? What are your strengths? It doesn't matter what the other person's doing. Like, what can you bring to the team? And if you make a mistake, what are you going to do to reset? So just taking that away from my program and then implementing it into like myself has been like, yeah, a game changer.
And then what are the resources like within the NWSL for mental health for those struggling? Are they a team by team basis? Is there an overarching players experience that regulates all of those resources for you?
Yeah, so the PA, so our Players Association, has brought on, they've partnered with a counselor who is accessible for free for the players in the league. And I know some teams have their own sports psychologist, like not like they're full time, but they have them there to be utilized. And I think that's a growing field. There's going to be more, I think, sports psychs or mental health counselors or like wellness coaches. And I think that the league has identified that that's a big need right now. And that's why the Players Association went out and found counselors that are accessible for players. So something that we didn't have in the past and something that's definitely grown and will keep growing.
Do you think that that's because the players have more of a platform to ask for those things? Or do you think that that's just a general sign of the times?
Yeah, I think both. I think players have been more vocal about it and then it's about like needing more resources. And I think with our insurance, they might cover a few as well now. So the league has started to shift with our insurance. And I appreciate all the other athletes and individuals who have spoken up about mental health and shedding light on the fact that people, you know, do need more resources. And so I think that kind of the combination of the two kind of drove that for the league. And I'm excited to see what more can be done with that for moving forward.
And moving forward for you, what's next?
When is this podcast coming out?
This podcast is coming out. Let's see. So your episode will go live on March 9th. So you have a fair amount of time.
Okay. Well, then I can tell you what I'm doing. Okay. Well, actually, I don't know because there's a lot that might change by then. But right now, I'll keep this vague. I am deciding my soccer fate right now. I have opportunities for counseling positions. I have been working with Soccer Resilience, which works with individuals. So I just talked with them, and I'm going to be working with someone actually next week. And I'm also coach on the side, and I have ideas for our Players Association and clubs. So I'm like kind of all over the place, but like have lots of ideas. And if I don't end up playing, I will be pursuing more like sports counseling positions and figuring out where to go from there.
I just had a soccer resilience episode.
Really? Oh, that's right. I saw that because I went through your podcast to see. Did you have Wells, I think?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I interviewed him a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he's great. And I appreciate his passion. I'm sure you heard his passion. I don't know. He is like so enthusiastic.
He's very passionate.
I love his energy. And yeah, I was talking with them just trying to see if there could be something more like full-time and concrete, but they're still like developing and new. And so I'm going to do some individual work with them and then maybe help with some league stuff with them as well, because it would be, if what happens with them, they're trying to, I don't know if he told you what they're trying to do. Did he tell you that?
That was maybe a month
Oh, okay.
ago. So I'm sure
Yeah.
it's changed because he
Yeah.
had a lot of ideas when we talked.
He is a visionary, but yeah, so they're involved with the league, and hopefully if things go through, then I would help with that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
How
And
important is that to have resources like that that are not only aimed at soccer, but are led by like current and former players?
yeah, I think that if players, I think it's great that like players are trying to get more involved with things, and you've seen it with like a few, like Bev is an assistant coach for Gotham and she played, and Sid just got hired on by the PA, and she's helping Megan Burke with a lot of our CBA stuff, which is super incredible. And Becca Morris used to do it. So I think it's going to be, oh yeah, Yael is like the GM. So many more people, and same with Kansas City. But I think if players have the passion, and if they have like the education or like the willingness to learn and be involved, that is so valuable, because you can't really, like, no one can understand better than someone who's already been through it. And if they obviously have the skill sets there to like embrace their role, then I think it's incredible. So I'm looking forward. I think there'll be more players involved in the league in some capacity, especially with like coaching licenses that they're offering throughout the league too, if you've hit certain criteria. So maybe there'll be more coaches or more players involved in the Players Association. So yeah, it's exciting to see.
And then why did you ask if this was, I mean, how time sensitive is that update?
Well, I'll be coming out soon.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that this episode will come out at the very beginning of March. So I mean, you have like a month. So if there's anything between now and then that you have as an update, anything that you want to include that looking back on this interview you didn't talk about, anything that changes dramatically between now and the published date, just direct message me, email me, and we can include that. And then if I can just get a picture of you either in action or a headshot that I can use for social media, once
Okay.
again, you can either email that or direct message me. And
Okay.
if there's anything else that you wanted to say before we close down this interview, I've concluded my questions. Anything that I missed? Anything that you want to talk more about?
Well, one, I just want to say thank you, because I think this is really cool. And my question's for you.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, like, what drove you for doing this podcast? I think it's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. So I graduated in 2019 from West Virginia University, and I graduated with 2 bachelor's degrees in broadcast journalism and sports psychology.
Cool.
And what I realized was that there were really no outlets that were specific to athlete mental health. And there are a couple more now. Like the Players Tribune just started a podcast like 2 weeks ago that has a lot of athletes coming on and talking about similar things to this podcast. And I was just thinking, I was looking at the dynamic of athlete mental health in media, and there really wasn't much. I mean, Kevin Love had already become a rather respected mental health advocate in the space, but other than that, there were not really athletes on a grand scale telling their stories. There would be like an Instagram post here or like a Twitter rant there, but there was nothing really that was specific to grand scheme storytelling. And I was just thinking, okay, well, I have these 2 interests, let's combine them. And so it started out kind of very small, just a weekly thing. And your episode will be, I think, 55.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, I started out just kind of putting out some feelers with athletes saying, well, this is like, I saw your story or I heard about your story on a different podcast. Would you like to come on and like tell it to me? And we can get some more outreach for your story. I mean, everyone has been like, absolutely, Julia, like when can we schedule? But it's really nice to see that difference, because athletes, and not just collegiate athletes, but professional athletes, Olympians who are representing their countries on the world stage, are coming on this podcast and just sitting down with me for an hour and telling their story. It's really incredible.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. I think like, well, that's, yeah, I think a lot of times, like I said, people have like a good story and they want to tell it because they've kept it down or no one's been interested in. So I can imagine that people are, one, flattered and grateful that you're interested in their story, and then two, giving them the platform to tell it and share it. And then in turn, you're probably impacting a lot of people too, because then people are like, oh my God, I can identify with that, or that's really cool, or I learned this. So
Yeah, I've actually had a couple people direct message me and say this was like, I really resonated with this episode or this episode, and like,
yeah,
that's why I do this.
yeah, that's
Because like no one on my podcast is having a unique experience. And like that sounds abnormal to say, but when you look at them, their experiences in the grand scheme of existence, they're not the only ones suffering through anxiety by themselves. Like
yep.
performance anxiety is very common,
It is.
and it's all of these things that in the moment made them feel like they were alone. And when you juxtapose that onto a podcast, and there are some common themes every week that I feel like I talk about with every single podcast guest, it just becomes like a theme rather than an island.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. That's so cool. I can't wait to, yeah, keep seeing who you bring on and learning more about other people's stories too, because that's really cool as well.
Yeah, I just think that there isn't a limit to the amount of advocacy we can give to mental health, and especially athlete mental health. And I think that if I can just continue to create content and talk to the most amazing people with the most incredible stories, like that's what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, you're doing the right thing, and you're in turn helping a lot of people too.
I
So
hope so.
thank you. You are.
And then if there is anything, like I was saying, that you wanted to talk a little bit more about, anything you wanted to go into more depth about before we conclude, I kept it under an hour.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending time with me.
No, that's this has been great. This has been fun. So thank you.
And then I'll get back out to you and blow up your phone with notifications in March when this episode comes out.
Perfect. I love that. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for coming and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
And then if you can just send me that picture for social,
Oh yeah.
you
Yep.
have a month, so it's not really a big deal, but just sometime before the 9th.
Okay, perfect. We'll do.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.